Everybody, welcome back. Craig Shoup here with George Thomas, our Akron Beacon Journal film critic. It's been a couple of weeks, George. How are you doing?
I'm good.
I hope you've had some good times at the movies lately.
You
Maybe not though, but we'll get into that. We're glad to
asked
be
for a
back.
lot the past couple weeks, dude.
Yeah, we're glad to be back. The summer movie season is in full swing. It's kind of been a weird summer for the movies with not a lot of big blockbuster box office success, with the exception of a couple of movies, but maybe one this weekend with Twisters. So, not to be confused with Twister, the '96 movie that I mean, more or less was a little. I know we've talked about this a little bit, sort of ahead of its time in terms of its spring release,
It
kind of
changed.
opening the box office.
It changed the release calendar.
Yeah,
There's no doubt about it. And we've reverted back to, I'm going to call it a pre-Twisters release calendar, at least this year, primarily because of the strikes and the pandemic. But
right. Yeah,
Twister came out at a time when summer movie season started Memorial Day weekend, and it came out May 10th, 1996,
yeah.
blowing that calendar away by 2 weeks. And over the years, it got progressively, the summer started progressively earlier. It would be, no joke, 40 degrees in Cleveland in April, and it was summer movie
It
season.
was,
So
yeah,
there
yeah.
you
Well,
go.
and Marvel has been at the forefront of a lot of that with like Avengers. Those movies were late April releases. I know Endgame was an late April release. So yeah, definitely we've seen the summer movie season kind of expand a little bit, although this season, like you said, it's a little bit different maybe because of the strike, and we haven't really seen a lot of huge blockbusters. I think Inside Out 2 is probably the one exception to the summer rule right now. Bad Boys Ride or Die did pretty well for a while there, although R rated, so you didn't expect it to have a several weeks long success. But here we have Twisters, not a sequel. I guess you could say it's a reboot. I don't know if it lives in the same universe as the Helen Hunt led film, but here we have it.
That's a problem a big problem I had with this movie. And
Okay.
mind you, it's entertaining. I'm going to give it that. But
Okay.
it's a big freaking tease with some plot points because it makes you think that the main character, girl named Kate, who has survivor's remorse over her Twister related science project going bad, and three of her closest friends, who she was attending the University of Oklahoma with, being killed. I don't know, call me crazy, but I think the odds of being killed while being out in a Twister are kind of elevated. But
A little bit. A
she's
little
got
bit.
survivor's remorse along with another friend who was helping with the experiment. And all throughout this, you're thinking this is Helen Hunt's daughter from the first movie because they're trying to get this thread throughout it. You think that's got to be the cinematic DNA connection, and I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's like, does it matter if I spoil it?
I don't think it will.
It's a tease. They play it for all it's worth, and it doesn't pay off. And I it's kind of manipulative,
Yeah.
and I had trouble with this movie simply because of that, the manipulation, the untold number of cliches.
Yeah.
How many times have we seen survivor's remorse? You know what? And I don't know what's going to happen with the aliens resurrection or whatever it's called next month,
Right.
but
Right.
it seems we've gotten to the point where they're going for these reboots, but with a younger, prettier cast. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Right. Right. Yeah.
With all due respect, Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt had, I don't know if gravitas is the right term,
Hmm. Yeah.
but but they had a presence on screen that didn't rely on looks. You knew Helen Hunt could act. You
Right.
knew Bill Paxton could act. Bill Paxton came in and stole scenes in any movie he appeared in.
Yeah.
Gleefully. I mean, think
Yeah.
about, go back to Aliens when nobody knew who he was. And it's like, I don't judge movies by quotable lines, but I will judge it by a memorable character. And boom, he's got one of the most memorable characters in Aliens. And Twister,
Right.
he parlayed that into a starring role. Good
Yeah.
for him. Character's kind of bland, but he did everything he could with it. I'm not seeing that here. And it's not fair to compare the movies, but if you're going to reboot it, the comparisons are going to come.
Yeah. Right.
And this is all blow and no show. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you this because one of my biggest issues with this movie going into the announcement, the trailers, the knowing that this movie is going to exist in the world of film. The first movie felt sort of big in scale because it was really a unique. We didn't really see a lot of disaster movies at that time.
No,
But
no.
since then, we've seen everything under the sun as far as disaster movies go, like The Day After Tomorrow, 2012, all these movies that have incorporated not just tornadoes, but earthquakes and tsunamis and blizzards and freeze. And yet here we just have multiple tornadoes, like, you know what I mean? So does it feel, so when I thought of that, I thought, does it really feel like a summer blockbuster when we've seen movies like, if this was a quick direct sequel to Twister, I could see it being like, oh no, wow, this is like the end of the world, there's multiple Twisters. But now we've seen so many movies that have come out, some may be better than others, but that have tackled the end of the world, the natural disasters at a huge, large scale. And to me, this doesn't seem like that. Am I wrong? After you've seen this, did they find a scale and scope to tell just a tornado movie?
Well, if you live in Oklahoma, sure.
Right.
Because I'm sure they Oklahoma feels it being in Tornado Alley.
Right.
Parts of Ohio are in Tornado Alley.
Yeah.
Does that translate to being able to identify with this subject matter and representing a huge perspective on screen? I don't necessarily think so. They try. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm a fan of Dolby Atmos.
Yeah.
And it's the scenes with the storms with the twisters. Yep, impressive. They are. You're immersed. I saw it in Cinemark XD. And the problem is most of everything else around it. I give credit for the director moving it along at a relatively brisk pace, which is scary considering it's 2 hours long.
Right.
It doesn't feel like that. It's I look at it this way. Twister wasn't a summer blockbuster. Twister stumbled onto blockbuster status.
Yeah.
And I think it took Universal Studios by surprise way back then. And I was reviewing movies back then. Everybody was shocked.
Right.
This is going to shock no one because it, with all due respect, and I hate to be cynical, it comes across what it basically is, and that's a money grab.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and another, this seems like it's been the last year or so of Glenn Powell. Obviously, he seems to have vaulted into, at least leading man status here, handling a big project like this. Obviously, he had Hitman, which was a more intimate movie, but also working with Richard Linklater. He had the Anyone But You last December for the romantic comedy side of things. He's been in Top Gun Maverick. I mean, this guy seems to be the the new flavor of the week, month, whatever you want to call it in Hollywood. Is that, I mean,
Wow.
does he hold your attention as a leading man?
Dude, I'll be honest with you. You rattled off everything he's done in the past year. I had to go back to Top Gun Maverick to figure out what this guy has been in.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I had to look that up. I mean, right now to me, he appears generic guy. Now, again, you could have said that about Bill Paxton,
Yeah.
but Bill Paxton elevated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every he elevated everyone around him, and I don't know what's going to happen to Glenn Powell, but he doesn't elevate anyone here.
Okay.
He's playing the all shucks,
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
old boy,
Right.
and it's like, okay.
Right. Well, and there was, I mean, obviously, I think people tempered expectations given the subject matter, but it did have, the backing with Lee Isaac Chung directing. He's a double Oscar nominee for director and screenplay for Minari, which was a beloved independent movie, and obviously, this is his opportunity to cash in on a studio film and make some money. So then now he can go back and make better movies, probably. But are
That's
you?
that's the modus operandi. You know that's the modus
Yeah,
operandi.
yeah. I mean, he had to do this so he could go back to doing what he wants to actually do, which is fine. But you also wonder sometimes, those directors can take that on and elevate material, but it doesn't sound like even from his perspective, it's not elevated. It's not. It's just kind of that cash grab that people are probably going to go in. If you like Twister, maybe you'll have the nostalgic feel, but I don't know. You kind of feel like if you're going to get an Oscar nominated director and writer, that maybe you might be able to elevate this kind of material a little bit, but it doesn't sound like it.
No, I no, no, no. It is what it is. It's entertaining. I want to.
Somewhat summer escapism to a certain level, and then it's just not really worth it.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, if you've got a Dolby Atmos theater at home, and I realize that's not something everybody has.
Yeah,
If you have one at home, you can easily wait for video on this. I
yeah.
mean, there isn't a lot new there. I will, being from Cleveland, I will say simply because um, Superman Genesis wrapped filming here this week that David Cornsweet is in this movie, and
I heard that
he's Superman. He plays Superman in James Gunn's upcoming
yeah.
production. So it was interesting to see him, but other
Okay. And I know everybody can read what you wrote about Twisters on beaconjournal.com. I saw that you gave it a C plus. So buyer beware maybe for some going to the theater, but hey, for others it might be something that they're looking to try to get to. So, I mean, box office wise, hopefully it kind of does something because, even Despicable Me 4 has not really performed at the box office like previous movies in that franchise. Obviously, Inside Out 2 had a great run. But, I mean, a Quiet Place Day 1 did well. But yeah, I mean, the box office is kind of looking for a little bit more heft here.
I think, with all due respect, I think the box office is looking for a couple superheroes named Deadpool.
Yeah, yeah,
Great. I mean, there's no reason to pad it. Everybody has been waiting for that freaking movie.
yeah.
R rating be damned.
Right. Well, I mean, it hasn't stopped the first two Deadpool movies, and obviously you're adding in Hugh Jackman and some of the fun banter that Jackman and Ryan Reynolds have is priceless. So I can only imagine the chemistry that they'll probably have on screen. But that's maybe for next week we'll talk a little bit about Deadpool and Wolverine. But another movie that did come out that you were able to catch was Fly Me to the Moon. This is a theatrical release that will eventually go on to Apple TV Plus. I mean, these are the types of movies I think we've kind of talked about before where they're, mid-level budgets, 50, $75 million kind of budgets where they're not expected to perform well, but you kind of are happy that these types of films get made, even if they're not all that great. Tell us about Fly Me to the Moon.
You know what? This is a movie that when we first started doing this, would have been destined for a place like Max because it was one of those movies.
Right.
And Fly Me to the Moon is a movie about marketing in the space race, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie basically rewrites history to create a romantic comedy, a drama, and make a political statement. It never really never really slips into a groove with respect to what it is. Scarlett Johansson plays a Madison Avenue marketing executive recruited by a shady CIA operative portrayed by Woody Harrelson to basically punch up support for the space race.
Yeah.
Totally fictionalized because we're talking about 60s. Madison Avenue and a female executive going to work in Florida. And, it's an odd film. It really is. Because you know what? I'd be a liar if I didn't say there were aspects of it I thoroughly enjoyed. And Greg Berlanti, I mean, he's best known for creating the Arrow universe and the CW.
Mm.
He seems to have an understanding of what he loves about it, and number one is that's just the delving into the space race and what was at stake, and he presents that in a nice way, but he uses it to indulge a conspiracy theory and set up the scenario where a fake moon landing was ready to go, so that the mission to the moon would not fail, even if it failed. But he uses that to explore how much of a uniter, how much that mission was needed.
Yeah.
Because it came at a time when the country was divided by Vietnam. Now, mind you, I was 4 years old. Is that 69? 4 years old.
Yeah.
I remember my grandparents waking me up to witness the moon landing because in Ohio it happened in the dead of the night. It was like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I remember about it. I don't remember the upheaval at the time. But it kind of draws parallels to what's going on here. It's as if in here and now, it's as if Berlanti's saying America needs a moment like this.
Right, yeah.
Remember who America is. And on that level, I have an appreciation for it. I have an appreciation for the obvious chemistry between Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum. I like the fact that they buy into it. But the possibility is so preposterous that it just sends your mind wandering. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I did appreciate the Colin Jost cameo, so I'm sure lots of people will appreciate that. If you don't know who Colin Jost is, look him up.
Yeah.
But, I think I gave this a B-. Did I review this? Yes, I did. I gave it a B-. Let's just say I won't be buying the Blu-ray because I've seen it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that again, we talk about movies like this that are, it's either a big extreme where it's $100-200 million budget, or if it's nothing. And this is sort of one of those in-betweeners, probably. And hopefully, I know it hasn't done much at the box office, but you want movies to be made. You want all different types of movies to be made. And this is kind of one of those in that middle category where it's not quite in that big budget blockbuster area, but it's also not quite like an indie darling. So it's kind of in that, studio, mid-level set, mid-level filming, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, I know it's going to be an Apple TV Plus movie, so I don't think box office was really a big issue for them to a degree. I think they just whatever they get is what they get, and I mean, it's made a little bit of money, but
I think if they get a good portion of that budget back, I think they'll be happy. And you know what? It's nice to see Scarlett Johansson throw her weight around to get this made. I mean, let's face it, she's got a lot of Marvel's cinematic universe cred as far as appeal.
Right.
And she could have used it on something more with more scope. Let's try that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I know that things are always picking up with streaming. Obviously, we just had the Emmy announcements, which there were quite a bit of love for Shogun and the Bear. The Bear is another show that has just come out with its third season. Now, the Emmys that they just cleaned up on for their nominations are for season 2. So this is season 3 that we're getting into now. I have to admit, George, this is a show that I have not really watched, although it's always kind of been on my list and I've heard people talk about it. And I definitely want to try to get to it at some point. But, now 3 seasons deep, I mean, is The Bear one of those must-watch shows out there for people?
It still is, although there's a big debate going on now with those Emmy nominations as to whether it's actually a comedy. And I got to admit, it kind of walks the line. You hear the term dramedy. I'd say there are times it delves more into the drama aspect, but every time my wife and I have saved the last 2 episodes for a quiet night when we have nothing to do.
Yeah.
But we got through the first 8 like that because they're only half-hour episodes.
Right.
And there's just some the Bear is funny in the way that it just gets its humor from a place that anybody can identify with. Like you have that cousin that you have a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
You have that brother that you have a love-hate relationship. Let's face it, if you don't have any kind of parental issues, I question the way you were raised. Because every kid's got a bone to pick with their parents. And I know my sons probably have an entire skeleton to pick with me. Because I was a hard ass for most of the time before they were adults. And it just seems so raw and honest because of that. Great performances by Jeremy Allen White and cast. Cast with some of the most difficult to pronounce names on the planet.
Right.
And it basically picked up with the same tone and the same vibe that they left off with season 2. You want more every time you watch it.
Yeah. Well, so you've seen all but 2 episodes here for season 3?
Yep.
Okay. And obviously a strong recommendation here for people to get to that as it continues to release weekly.
I would get to The Bear. I would get to Presumed Innocent.
Okay.
Both tremendous series. FYI, Star Trek Prodigy is back on Netflix.
Okay. Did they buy the rights from Paramount then, or
they canceled the show and Trek fans pulled an original series campaign only through social media this time.
Okay. So that means that Netflix will have like 1 season and then cancel it probably, and everybody will get mad about that too.
Yeah, I know that it did ratings wise. I don't know how they measure it. Yeah. The show has cracked the top 10 in streaming.
Okay.
I mean, it hasn't done Beverly Hills Cop Axel F numbers, but it's the truckers are going to show up, good, bad,
Yeah,
or ugly.
that's true. And that's probably why they decided to buy some an intellectual property like that, where they know they can kind of capitalize on popularity. Okay. All right. Well, I know next week is a big one for the summer movie season. Will probably give us another potential $1 billion movie. Talk a little bit about what we have coming up next week. You teased a little earlier.
Next week is Deadpool and Wolverine.
All
And
right.
this is the superhero pairing that everybody has
Yes.
been waiting for.
Yeah. And very exciting to see. I mean, I was pleasantly happy with Deadpool 2. I thought, they had a fun little sequel there. Obviously, sequels are always hit and miss sometimes, or not hit and miss, but sometimes you just feel like it's not quite as good as the original. But I enjoyed, really even the first, the opening credits where they had the Celine Dion power ballad running through the credits, and I thought, Zazie Beetz and Josh Brolin were fun additions to the cast there for the second one. And there's a lot of hype here, although this one's a little bit different, I think, because this one is going to be under that really intense Marvel scrutiny, I guess, because it is a Disney Marvel produced superhero movie, and it's the first Deadpool Disney produced movie. So are you nervous about this one? Do you have excitement? I mean, do you feel like Disney can't screw this up if they let Ryan Reynolds and team go to work?
I think Disney realizes that if they leave Ryan Reynolds alone, that they win the summer. And the fact that I don't recall Disney ever releasing a red band trailer for anything.
Yeah.
And this movie has a couple of them, and they're not even close to being subtle.
Right. Yeah.
Not
Well,
even.
yeah. I didn't expect them to tame it down, but I was curious. Just and I think you hit the nail on the head with just getting out of their way, because I think that I read earlier that the Russo brothers, who are Ohioans, which is great. I'm a fellow Ohioan. You are too, but that they're in talks to maybe direct the next couple of Avengers movies. And my very first thought was, I don't care. I mean, they will work under the Kevin Feige, this is what you need to do, and this is how it needs to look, and this is how it's got to be mentality. And it's just kind of a overly, you know, boxed in project. Whereas hopefully with Deadpool and Wolverine, they aren't really dabbling too much. And, that's sort of my hope, is we get a continuation of this strange Deadpool universe that's been very exciting and very refreshing for the superhero genre.
Um, and Ryan Reynolds, we trust. I
Yeah.
mean, I've interviewed him a couple times, and I don't go out of my way to flatter people very often, but he is the best way to put it for me is he's the R-rated Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
And and if you look at him, probably up into the first Deadpool movie, the career trajectories were kind of the same, and he's veered off to do edgier stuff, while Tom Hanks is
Right.
every man. He's Tom Hanks is Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe Ryan Reynolds, except he's got that everyman mentality with a foul mouth, and you love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. He's got a very approachable persona and approachable, just happy go lucky at times, but then he'll mix in the foul mouth type stuff too. And I've always kind of been on the fence with Ryan Reynolds, though, I have to admit. Like, I've never thought, I know you've mentioned the Tom Hanks stuff before, but I've never really been 100% all in on that, because I feel like he's just kind of coasted by for so long. And then when Deadpool comes into play, I think he finally I guess figured out hey, this is right up my alley, and I can be great in something. and it doesn't have to be like, going off of my looks as a romantic comedy lead. Here he's able to be maybe like himself turned up to like 11 and have a lot of fun with something. And I think he's really found a niche with that character. And it'll be interesting to see. I liked him in Free Guy a lot. He was really good there. And so I think I've turned a little bit towards liking Ryan Reynolds and thinking he's more of an actor now than he was, prior to the Deadpool kind of breakout. But I'm excited for Deadpool and Wolverine. And it's not just because I'm a fan of, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. I'm a fan of what Ryan Reynolds has done with that Deadpool franchise and that character. I mean, he just seems to hit all the right notes and just be like a perfect person to play that part.
Now, considering what it looked like when he first took that part.
Right. Yes. Ooh. Who can forget? Well, actually, I think everybody can forget that one. That was
I think everybody has forgotten that one. Yes. I mean, was that X2 or?
No. That was X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Okay. Yeah.
It was. Unfortunately, I can't forget that because, and I think a lot of it too is because he's actually poked so much fun at it that he almost kind of puts it into your mind. Like, hey, remember when I did this terrible Deadpool in this terrible X-Men universe? And, he certainly has, regained the credibility for that character. And he's atoned for the mistakes of old from the really terrible X-Men Origins movie.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, George, as always, you can follow George at by George Thomas. You can read all of his reviews at beaconjournal.com. George, we hope that you have fun at Deadpool, and we will talk again next week. And again, I hope you have a great time at the movies.
Yeah, Deadpool. They're making me drive 35 miles for that one.
It's probably worth it.
You ever drive 480?
Yeah.
480 west from the east side.
Yeah. Well, maybe not from the east side, but yeah.
I hate that bridge.
Yeah, you'll be fine. We'll root for you, and you'll have a fun time, and maybe you'll watch a good movie too. We'll hope.
I'm taking Rockside Road all the way.
All right. Well, you take care, and we'll talk to you next week.
Later.